Welcome to Covenant of Justice. I'm attorney Isaiah Jerez, and every other week we sit down with remarkable individuals of Southern Nevada who make this such a wonderful place to live. Together, we explore a wide range of topics that matter to the people of Las Vegas and beyond, offering a glimpse behind the glamour of the Strip to showcase the real stories, experiences, and voices that shape our community. Today, I'm joined by Bart Patterson. He is the acting director of Get Outdoors Nevada. Thanks so much for coming in today, and tell us a little bit about what you do with Get Outdoors Nevada.
Well, thanks for having me. And I've been with Get Outdoors Nevada fairly recently, but I'm the acting executive director, and I have a long history with the organization, knowing kind of the former executive directors for the organization, and then kind of the work that it's been doing in the community. I've been on a couple of trips with the organization. So now I'm sort of leading the effort and helping the staff kind of navigate some transitions as we go forward in our 25th anniversary year.
Yeah, so going on 25 years being around, focusing on getting people outside, right? There's a lot to see in Nevada. So what do we see looking forward in this year for Get Outdoors Nevada?
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of what we've been doing in the past successfully. We're very well known for our community outreach events. We can drive probably the best volunteer base in Nevada. Volunteers come out and they participate in trail cleanups, in park cleanups. We pull weeds, we clean up trash, we plant trees. All of that happens kind of on the stewardship side of things. And then we have a really strong connection to kids. So we lead field trips and provide grants for teachers to lead their own field trips to the great outdoor spaces here in Southern Nevada particularly. So that's Red Rock Canyon, it's Lake Mead, it's Valley of Fire State Park, Mount Charleston, all these kinds of great areas that a lot of kids, particularly in Title I schools that we focus on, they may not have been out to these spaces. And so that's part of our real great connection too, is to help kids get to the outdoors. And then we do a lot of other dramatic stuff too that you might not think of when you think about Get Outdoors Nevada. We do some pretty major project work. For example, we just announced that we received a $250,000 grant from Cox to help working with the National Park Service at Lake Mead to restore and improve the Railroad Tunnels Trail, which is a very popular trail and beautiful trail that goes along the original railroad grade back when the dam was built. So we're kind of the head of that project, and we've done that also with what's called the Outer Loop Trail that we were working on. We've worked on in the past and we'll work again, we hope, in the future.
The Outer Loop Trail. Which is the Outer Loop Trail?
That is not a fully completed trail, but the intention of that trail is to go literally all the way around the valley. And so it's about 2/3 of the way done now. It connects up to the River Mountain Loop Trail that a lot of bikers particularly use that trail. That kind of goes around from Henderson to Boulder City and along Lake Mead. It connects up with that trail. And so the portions are complete to go from there all the way over into the southwest part of Las Vegas. And now we've got to complete that section from southwest Las Vegas over to Sloan Canyon and Henderson.
Oh, and this is the paved trail that is available to people that are running, cyclists, just people out there for walking or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You could have a stroller on it. It could be a bike.
Yeah.
So we get combinations of people that are looking for that outdoor recreation. And so that's why it's so important to have those spaces available.
Yeah, and I've been riding that River Mountain Trail, I think, probably going on 15 years. And it's beautiful, especially when you get down by Lake Mead, because there's hardly anybody out there. A really peaceful time. But being so remote, when it rains, all the gravel just gets washed right up onto that trail. And oftentimes I've seen people out there just on their own accord with a shovel and a large broom, just a little bucket on their bike to carry everything, and they're out there shoveling it and doing it themselves. And so you actually focus on making sure that you get the volunteers together to go out there and maintain those trails, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's an example of one that we did a couple of sections March 14th. So just recently, we did a couple of sections of that trail from kind of the Boulder City over to It's the Union Pacific Trail, so it's not literally the railroad tunnel portion of the trail. But we had two different groups, one from Boulder City and one from Henderson, that were working on helping clean that up. But we love to see people just, do it kind of on their own. We love to see ambassadors of trails, and we're trying to foster that kind of culture of taking care of the things that are important to us, and that's a big part of what we do.
Yeah, and you kind of talk about, I guess, not only taking care of it, but also letting people know that it's there, going to Title I schools and taking them out there saying, hey, look at this beautiful scenery that's in just outside of Las Vegas, right? Because a lot of people maybe come here for other reasons and they get here and they're like, whoa, like we actually have a lot of recreational areas that are very beautiful.
Oh, the stunning terrain here. I'm a big hiker. So I was in the 52 Peak Club back in the day, and so I've climbed most of the prominent points around southern Nevada. But Red Rock Canyon, Lake Mead, Mount Charleston have some really stunning areas to go into, and so we love connecting, kids, families, communities to the outdoors. And more recently, we've started projects to create what we call native habitat gardens. And so we have 9 larger gardens around the valley. And the idea is to bring in more native plants. A lot of the plants that you see in the nurseries, they're southwestern plants, they're desert plants, and so they do well here, but they're actually not native Mojave desert plants. And there's a bit of a difference in how those plants thrive and the bees that they attract. So we like to have native pollinator bees, which are really interesting. They don't swarm like other bees, so they're not like, people shouldn't be afraid of them in the way that sometimes people are afraid of bees. They rarely sting and they don't swarm like that. But they help pollinate all of these native plants around the valley, and so we're going to continue to grow that. So a big part of what we do is education. So we have a model where we teach teachers about the Mojave so they can convey that to their kids. And also we do guided trips both to like native habitat garden sites as well as to these other sites we talk about, where we also provide education about the Mojave and the importance of it. So there's neat stuff that we're involved in. I'm really honored to be part of it.
Yeah, and that's interesting with the bees. I'm not, maybe that is that the major focus with having these native habitat gardens is reviving or strengthening the bee population that's native here?
Yes, that's a big part of it, and then also having plants that are more drought resistant and also use less water, and so that's all real positive things about what we do and the education we're trying to provide. What we'd really like to see in the future is we'd like to start, that program has largely been with schools and with like the cities and the county. We'd like to actually start rolling that out in the future and looking for grant funding to help us do that with homeowners, so that homeowners themselves start putting their own native habitat plants that they might not find it at typical nurseries, but you can find at some specialized nurseries that specialize in native habitat.
That are native, right? Because if we're getting stuff that's native, they're going to flourish better, right? Strengthening the bee population. But if the bee populations, if there is like a foreign bee population that comes in, do they start to compete for space and resources?
Well, I don't know if they're as competitive in that way. That's an interesting question. So I don't really know the answer to that. But what we see in areas where we have native plants is we don't see the other bees really in that space. So I don't know who's asserting the authority there, but I think it may be the plants themselves that attract native bees, that they come in because they recognize those plants. So there's not enough native plants to have the native bees survive solely on native plants. So they also are pollinators of other plants. So our objective is to grow the native plants even more so that it grows the bee population, and they help pollinate and spread the native plant seeds around the valley.
The cholla, right? That's native, isn't it, to the Mojave?
Yeah, I believe the cholla is native to the Mojave. That would be an example of one. Um, some
And
are really common.
do, those seem to, as you go up in elevation, those
Hmm.
seem to grow more readily than they do at lower elevations. Is that
Uh,
true?
yes, I mean, and
Yeah.
partly that's the Mojave Desert itself, which tends to be a higher desert than
Mm-hmm.
you might see in other places. So you'll see
Mm-hmm.
that. You'll also see in the Mojave, you see a lot of creosote, which is a very, very common plant here. And then as you start to get up in elevation, then you start to see more of like the pinyon pine and other plants, which are also essentially native here. The palm trees are not native,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah, right. They're easy. They're easy to grow, right?
Yes.
And those things don't die. Yeah, it's hard to kill them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great. Getting the kids out, getting the volunteers together, again, focusing on creating a great access, right, to the outdoors. So what are some of your favorite hikes in the Lake Mead area? I mean, we can break this down by
Well,
area.
yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
historic railroad tunnel trail is stunning, and it's not hard. It's
Yeah.
pretty flat,
Very accessible.
and
Yeah.
it's accessible for again bikes, strollers,
Hmm.
walkers, runners. And a lot of people utilize it, and
We'll go out there at nighttime in a full moon
oh yeah,
because it's a little bit safer, right? You don't have a lot of, and it's just
right.
beautiful. It's yeah.
Right. The tunnels
Yeah.
need some repair, and so that's something that we're helping with.
Mm.
But as you get toward the end of the trail, closer to the dam, they have a graveyard of old
Mm.
equipment that was used on the
Oh.
dam, and it's really quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Huh.
I think they actually call it the boneyard, not the graveyard.
Yeah.
Boneyard
Uh,
has a better term, I guess,
yeah.
than graveyard.
Uh,
But it's where a lot of that older machinery and equipment that was used on the dam is housed. That's fascinating in
mm,
itself. So there's a lot of history on the trail, and there's signage along that trail. So that's one of my favorites. One that maybe isn't quite as well known in the Lake Mead area, but if you've done the River Mountain Loop Trail, which you have, there's a place called Owl Canyon, which is one of the roadways off of that Lake Mead Road. And Owl Canyon does have owls from time to
mm,
time, but also has some really interesting slot canyons. And you can also do some loops that go to the Las Vegas Wash area. And you would not even think that this was in Las Vegas. It looks like a river and beautiful kind of wash terrain
mm.
with the stark desert landscape next to it. It's a really kind of stunning place to go see some diversity. So those are two I would mention.
Trying to think where that is. That's not the whole 33 turnoff.
I believe it
Oh,
is,
that's the
or
whole
just
33 turnoff.
before that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think too, but it might be
Mm,
just before that. But I do it, of course, I like to do crazier stuff, and I do it as a
yeah.
big kind of figure 8 loop through 3 different canyons
Mm,
and come back to the same spot. So I actually start closer to where the start of when you're coming from Lake Las Vegas. There's a
mhm.
turnout there, and you can drop down into the wash area right there.
Is that turnoff right before you go into the park? Is that there
No,
just
it's after
right after the
the
park?
turnoff and
Okay.
after the North Shore Road turnoff. Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's the first kind of parking area that you have after
Mm.
that.
There used to be an old not a port, but they would let the boats off right there, right? Back in the
Absolutely,
days, that
right down
huge.
below
Yeah.
there, and so you're kind of above
Hmm.
that. You could actually even park there and
Mm,
walk right down the wash and come into the same area.
mm, okay.
Mhm.
What about in Sloan Canyon?
Well,
What do you like?
Sloan is closer to where I live right now, and so
Yeah.
I've walked all through there. But Sloan Canyon is going through a new build of a visitor center there, so it's
Mm,
going to be a much more dramatic location to come to the trailhead and go to the visitor center. It has some of the most amazing petroglyphs in Las Vegas
mm,
area. That and the Valley of Fire have probably the two most amazing set of petroglyphs here. And it's not too challenging to hike to get there, although at the end there's a bit of a scramble up through the narrow canyon there to get to
mm.
the best part of it. But you see some stunning petroglyphs in that space. So well worth doing, particularly if you live in the Henderson or Southeast Valley area.
Yeah. What is that round trip? Is it 2 miles round trip
It's
or?
about I'd say about three and a
Okay.
half if you go
Mm,
to the kind of the deeper part of the petroglyphs.
yeah.
And a lot of people like doing the loop and going around on the Cowboy Trail to do it as
Mm.
a loop, both the Petroglyph Trail and the Cowboy Trail.
And Red Rock has become so, I mean, so popular right now. You got to get a reservation to get up there.
Yeah, you
And
do.
that's, I mean, that's good news, right? People are getting out there and seeing
Yes.
it. But what's your favorite hike up there in Red Rock?
Some of the things are not formal hikes, but as far as the sort
So
of
you're not going
off
to tell us about
trail
those. Those are,
scrambling to
yeah.
the tops of peaks, which I
Uh,
would hesitate to recommend unless somebody really wants to know and
yeah.
is experienced with that. But I like the Calico Tanks
Mm-hmm.
Trail that goes up to the tank, which often has water in it and has a view all the way out to Las Vegas from there. That's a really, really neat trail. I like going into the Calico Basin area because that doesn't require you to go in through the visitor center, and so you can get there without a permit. And there's lots of little hikes that you can do in that space, all around the base of those mountains, including in the grassy kind of tree areas, meadow areas that exist there. A lot of people don't know about. So I like that one a lot. And then along the highway toward Blue Diamond, going from Charleston Boulevard out to Blue Diamond, there's some pull-offs there, and there's some really neat hikes that you can go on, again, that don't require you to go into the Visitor Center Loop. One is First Water. We can go up to a beautiful waterfall that runs a fair amount of time during the year. And it's a nice little, maybe 4 mile round trip hike, not too steep.
Yeah.
Beautiful to see water in the desert. It's a
Yeah.
real treat. So
Yeah.
that's one I really like as well.
When does that usually dry up, that waterfall?
It depends on the year. This year it started getting so hot so early. It could be
Yeah.
another month or so, but usually you'll see water in there until late May, early June, and then it'll pick back up in the early fall.
Yeah. And then at Mount Charleston, where do you like to go when you go hike up in Mount Charleston?
There's a lot of routes I like there. A lot of it's still closed because of the severe drainage erosion problems that they had. So kind of my go-to hikes there are still Fletcher Canyon, which leaves right from the main road. And then if you go up on the saddle in between Lee and in between the main Mount Charleston road and then over the Lee Canyon, the North Loop Trail that goes up to the Rain Tree. It's a more challenging hike, but the Rain Tree is one of these iconic trees that has been around for hundreds of years. And it's like out of a Georgia O'Keeffe painting of like just amazing underneath that canopy of that tree, of the bristlecone pine tree, which are some of the oldest trees in the world.
How long is that hike?
That one is about 6 miles, 6.5 miles round trip.
A little bit more strenuous, higher altitude.
It's steeper,
on top.
higher altitude, and it has more steepness to it.
Yeah. I think I started up that trail, but then we cut off pretty early and came down. I think a ridge trail.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think, but we didn't make it up there. We had kids, and so it's a little bit tougher. But yeah. And then Valley of Fire. I mean, Valley of Fire is just amazing. Like if someone hasn't been out there, they've got to go out there just to. You just drive out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that little hike that goes, over to the petroglyphs and then to the little area where there was a Native American that sort of hid out there. That one is a really neat hike. And there's great spots. There's an old movie area. I don't know if a lot of people aren't familiar with. There was a movies filmed there. And it has an old like cabin structure that's still there, and also another kind of smaller slot canyon that's in there. So there's a lot of neat spaces in Valley of Fire too. So they're all worth checking out.
Yeah, and great place to scramble, right? Just run around the rocks.
Exactly.
Just have fun.
Exactly. There's a lot of good trails in there, but there's a lot of great places just go off trail and search around the rocks and things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So since you have so much to explore here, do you ever go out of the state and go just specifically to go hiking?
I do. I try to go hiking anywhere I go in the world. And I've done some interesting trek kind of hikes. One to Machu Picchu with my son. That was a 3-day, 2 overnight. I have to admit the porters took most of the gear. Those guys are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
You know, they could break camp, they could start you on the trail, break camp, and be running by you with like a heavy pack, you know, within an hour or two.
Man, that is amazing. Yeah.
That's just really
And
stunning.
again, at high altitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I
Yeah.
did a trek to the lost city of Colombia
Mm.
a few years back, and that was really really fascinating multi-day kind of trek to an area that was even older than Machu Picchu. Really really neat experience. But
Mm.
um, I started talking my wife a little bit into getting out to some of these spaces, and we did a trek in what's called the Julian Alps in Slovenia and Croatia area. And I don't know if I could convince her to go on another trek like that. It was a
Yeah.
little harder than we thought it was going to be.
Again,
Uh,
another multi-day
it was a
trek or
multi-day, and it's a little
yeah.
steeper, and
Mm.
no porter.
Oh, I had to carry everything yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if there's porters, maybe she's more open to it. Or, yeah.
Maybe more
Uh,
open to it. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And then plenty of things in here in the States that
Yeah.
really love to do.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about where we're at, Southern Nevada, right? Either direction we can go, we can find some trails,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Zion is
Yeah.
probably my favorite place
Mm.
to go, but I like the Escalante area, the Grand Staircase Monument area, and Grand Canyon, and Joshua Tree, and Capitol
Yeah.
Reef and Bryson, just everywhere.
Yeah.
There's just so many places here.
We've been going to Zion Canyon for
Yeah.
years, almost at least once a year. And last year was our first time that we experienced the east side of the canyon, and it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We went on a hike and we saw nobody on the east side. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was a holiday weekend too. There was nobody out there.
Neat.
Yeah, because most of the canyon you go and it's like Disneyland. Like you just get like you're like in line trying to get up the trail, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always take that with a measured kind of response. And people are always like annoyed there's so many people, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
the reason there's so many people here is it's so beautiful. So
And
expect
organizations
it.
like you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to get more people
Yeah.
out to the Mojave,
Yeah.
because not everyone appreciates the beauty of the Mojave. But once you start to kind of peel off some of the layers, and you see some of the water, and you have more
Mhm.
appreciation of the plants and the geography here. One of the projects we work on is the East Las Vegas National Monument. That's a proposal, which is over in the Frenchman Mountain area,
Hmm.
and that has some of the most amazing geographical features, where they go from billion years old up to several 100 million years old in the space of a very short time frame. Just absolutely amazing geographic features. It's also known as the Rainbow Gardens area.
Yeah.
If you're familiar, and
Mhm.
if you've done trails in
Mhm.
that space, bike riding and the like, it's kind of across from Clark County Wetlands Park, is that area that goes into the Rainbow Gardens area.
Yeah, another area that's really close to the city, but
Mhm.
at the same time very remote. Hardly anybody goes back there.
Right, and
Yeah.
our objective is to get more attention to the area,
Mhm.
and to help engender more of a community appreciation, to want to help steward that area. It's still an area that
Mhm.
receives a lot of like dumping.
Yeah.
People like leaving trash and old couches and different things that they'll put out in that space, and we're trying to build that culture of community that says this is our space that we want to protect and get more access into. So there's a lot of there needs to also be more trails in that area. So I think the hiking, biking community will appreciate it more. There are some trails that are developing over more on the Henderson side, across from Lake Las Vegas in that area, and there's actually some really beautiful trails developing in that space.
Yeah. So what is the next step to get that Frenchman's uh, sorry, we bike lots, we call it Frenchman's Loop, but
Yeah.
that Frenchman's Mountain, what is it to get that to be a national, or not a national monument or state monument?
It'd be a national monument
National monument.
as we
Yeah.
move that forward. Well, I mean, it takes, first of all, to get community support behind it, and
Mhm.
then to get it in a position where uh, the federal government recognizes that it has great cultural, historic, and preservation value, to want to take it to the next step up of like protecting that space. and getting more resources directed to that space. So it's a long process typically for monuments to get created. So right now we're in the kind of just getting more visibility to the area. And like I said, getting more community outreach events that are scheduled there and attention to that space so that when the time is right to propose, to make a formal proposal, that we're in the right space to do that.
Yeah, thanks for all the work that you do. I mean, that would be amazing to have that done over there because, like you said, you know, I mean, you only send so many volunteers to clean it up, right? But then if you have the backing of, you know, the federal government to really kind of preserve that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate talking to you.